All right, so we are recording. Welcome everyone to Track B's Session 3, Best Practices for Virtual CSE Meetings. Thank you to our captioner and our speakers this afternoon. We have with us Lisa Knowles, Lulu, Bencosme, and Steve Oill. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Alyssa. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the last session. I know it's Friday afternoon and Friday of a long week, so we're glad to have you here and really would like this to be a conversation with you and between us. So feel free to put any comments in the chat box that you may have experienced or things that have worked for you. And also feel free to ask questions and we will work through that during our presentation. I'm very excited to present with Lulu and Steve today. As Alyssa said, my name is Lisa Knowles. I'm currently the Director for Pupil Personnel Services in the Guilderland School District here outside of Albany. I started my career as an elementary school psychologist, but have served as an administrator of special education in rural, city, and suburban settings. Currently, I'm also on the executive board for the New York Council of Administrators of Special Education and a former board member of the Capital District Special Ed Task Force. I'm really excited to be reunited with some of my colleagues from my time with them. I'm also a mom of a 100% virtual high school junior and a sophomore in college. And as part of my role as the PPS director, I do chair meetings primarily for our students who attend out-of-district programs and parentally placed non-public students. So turn over to Lulu to tell us a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon. My name is Luarben Bencosme. Many know me as Lulu. It's the name, my stage name, I call it. And I am currently an equity specialist at the TAP for Equity, which is at Bank Street College, but we are a grant under New York State Office of Special Education. And it's part of the OSC partnership. And we are one of 4 TAPs that support New York State and special education districts and families. So thank you for having me. My role in CSE, CPSCs over the years has been from as a parent, as a SEED, as an interpreter, and also through my work as an educator and work that I've been doing the last 8 years, this work that I'm doing now. And I hand it to Steve.
Thank you, Lulu. I'm sorry for coughing, everybody. Anyone having tea or coffee right now? I'm having tea. It's that time of day. I definitely need a little caffeine and I'm presenting. So I hope you're all having something to drink out there. My name's Steve Oill. I work at Northern Rivers Family Services for 14 and a half years. I'm a credentialed family peer advocate. I provide emotional support for parents of youth that have mental health issues. And I provide advocacy as well, systems advocacy, but most of the advocacy that's called for is educational advocacy. So I have a lot of training, a lot of experience, and a lot of support in that area. I've been in human services. I always like to joke since I had hair some 30 years ago. But my son, who's now in his early 20s, has brought me into the field of parent peer support and advocacy when he was diagnosed with autism at age 2.5. And that really led me into a whole different part of the field in terms of human services. And it's been the part I've enjoyed the most. And if I might be so bold, I think I've done the best at. So I am, you never know where your path will be, where you're going to lead to or who's going to lead you there. And my little toddler son led me to this, and I'm grateful for that. So anyway, that's who I am. And I guess we'll go back to Lisa to lead us along.
Great, thank you. So this has certainly been a year that underscored our abilities to be flexible, find ways to problem solve and navigate the process during these times of uncertainty. I can't believe it's been over a year that we've been navigating along the way, and really also communicate and collaborate in the best interests of our students. When schools were closed to in-person instruction, we were in the middle of our annual review season, like the busiest time of year in any school district across anywhere in the state. So our special ed processes needed to still move forward. We couldn't stop. Didn't matter that there was a global pandemic. Didn't matter if there was an in-person learning. We couldn't stop. So today we want to share with you what we learned along the way, what worked, maybe what didn't work, and how we worked around it. And certainly been challenging, these virtual CSE meetings. And actually, I think we've actually experienced a lot of success with them too. So I hope you'll learn something from us today. And also, please, again, feel free to share what's worked for you or ask any questions in the chat. So first question for our esteemed panel here. Have you noticed any changes to pre-CSE meeting practices during COVID-19? Do you want me to start, or you want to start?
I'll start real quick. In general, my experience professionally has been that the meetings have gone on as they would have without the pandemic, with all the obvious changes and the Zooming and Google Meet and whatnot, but they continue to go on. I didn't even notice kind of a glitch in terms of March and April last year, like having to reschedule things. I was impressed by the school districts and that they kind of kept that going. So in that sense, in the simplest way, I kind of agree with your other point, Lisa, that you already said, that I think a lot of things have gone well from my perspective as an advocate. I know that's just one perspective, but overall, I'd say it's been good. And I'm sure as we go through the day, we'll talk more about what changes did happen. But that's what I'll say for now.
I would agree with you, Stephen. I also would say that I've noticed my experiences in working around different regions throughout the state, more engagement also to a certain point, because it's in a different perspective. So we're very much doing a lot intentionally communicating with families beforehand, making sure they know how to use Zoom and stuff, and also having those pre-opportunities of discussing, not just them receiving a letter, come show up on this day at this time or something like that. So I do find that in both ways, from the professionals and the families, that are communicating and engaging more also.
Yes, I agree with both of you. I think we've definitely seen increased involvement and communication between teacher and parent before the meetings, because we do have to do a lot of legwork to prepare and make sure families have the information they need, one, to access the virtual meet, have access to the documents they might need to review, have an understanding of their child's progress and what plans and recommendations would be forthcoming. So certainly I think there's been more intimate conversations between teachers, case managers, and families before the meeting, which has really helped us prepare. Certainly when we had to shift to virtual meetings, a little clunky, and we had to make sure people had the technology or the phone or the access to do it. And I still find myself muting myself accidentally or hanging up by mistake. So even after a year, there's still some glitches, but overall I think it's working out well.
Yeah, and just to quickly add to that, Lisa, another thing, because of my work, really working in equity and also working with diverse families that, we have in our New York State Education Department, is that also districts also working with interpreters and liaisons and really connecting with the families. It's also helped to that certain point too, where the family has the opportunity to speak with someone in their native language beforehand to explain everything to them. And the feedback that I'm getting in a lot of districts that do have these resources, like either liaisons or use a consulting company, are saying that the families are really engaging so much more, because they get like that one-to-one right before a meeting, like the day before and stuff like that. And they are like really gaining a lot more information. So there's just so many pros and cons, for everybody.
Certainly. And so in terms of preparing for our meetings, what types of meeting preparation do you recommend for parents, school staff, advocates, and others? And are these the same for in-person and virtual special education meetings?
Well, clearly we have not discussed any kind of an order of,
No.
which it's okay. I just don't want to be like, okay, I'll go first every time. So, but since no one else jumped at it, generally speaking, yes, the prep, I'm going to speak as an advocate in general, more about the parents and their preparation. Although I'll start with, as many people that are going to be at the meeting, the more prep, the more information they have before the meeting in preparation about the student, I think is the best. It will never hurt. You never have too much information. And for parents, I'm just always working with them on being proactive, making sure that they read the draft IEP, see if they have any questions about it. If they don't have it a week or so before, to reach out and say, you have this. Also to encourage them to give to the district whatever current information they have. I work with a lot of kids that have mental health issues, so I'm always encouraging parents to get an update from the therapist in writing, a paragraph or two, a one-page letter with what's been going on and how they're doing. I want to focus on how their disability is currently affecting their education, how they're learning. So the more updated information you have, the more it's appreciated by the district and by everyone on the committee. So I think the prep is the same. It might be a little easier for some people. Some people are better with emailing and whatnot, and but it's the same principles, and I keep working towards that during the pandemic.
I agree with you, Steve. And I think in the past before too, when people did request for things, there was a lot of concerns about security and things. And a lot of times families had to sign a waiver if they were going to email a draft IEP. And I think it's become more standardized for us now because of the way that we are performing the meetings. So it does make things more accessible and quicker than in the past before. So I think that's like the one thing that I find that has really changed in terms of preparing and sending things virtually.
Steve, we had a question to a point you made about preparing for a meeting. Someone asked, what is a good chunk of time to receive reports from therapists before a CSE meeting is scheduled?
Like an outside therapist, I mean, I always assume people are very busy, professionals, family members. So if I know that the meeting is a month from now, I'm going to check in now. I don't think there's a standard set amount of time. And I have also been known to ask for a letter on behalf of a parent from a therapist 2 days before. Like if we don't have it, if somehow I missed that and the parent missed that, well, then I'm encouraging the parent, or I will reach out and say, hey, the meeting's in 2 days. What can you do for us? Can you give us an update? But if I had to pick one amount of time to answer that person's question, I think like a week to 10 days lead time is reasonable. I think most therapists, they're pretty busy, but I would think that they can write off 2 paragraphs on a student and get that to the parent, who can get it to the district, or directly to the district if there's a release. I hope that answers the question. Please go back to the chat box. Let us know if I answered your question. If not, I'll ask it again in a better way, and another way, and I'll try to answer it better.
Well, I think too, from a district perspective, and I have the expectation for my staff, particularly that the draft IEP and any reports and evaluations are shared when writing to the family at least a week before the meeting. And if there's an evaluation conducted, I'd expect that the evaluator has reviewed that with the parent ahead of time and answered any of their questions. So it's not just, here it is, read it, good luck. It's, let's, review it. Here's my, my findings and what that means for your student and what we'll be sharing at the meeting. So in terms of preparing, these are all things we did before we were remote. We had these conversations, we shared draft IEPs, we expect that teachers seek parent input. Some of our teachers have a parent survey they send before the annual review meeting. Some of them talk personally to them. So we want to make sure that everyone has equal opportunity to participate and has the documents and the information ahead of the meeting. And the nice thing about remote is that you can share a screen now. So we can share a draft IEP in the meeting that everyone can look at together. We've certainly saved a lot of paper in terms of having everything sent electronically now as well, but it's nice that we can share the draft IEP and actually make changes in the moment if we need to, because we can present that to the participants.
We have 2 more things in the chat related to this topic. First, a comment from an advocate who said they've had many parents unable to access evaluations, progress reports, etc., because of technology, and being able to print and download and sending in the mail took way too long, so they had to be creative. And then another person who asked, whose responsibility is it to make sure that reports are sent to parents beforehand so the parents aren't having to ask for these documents?
Well, answer in terms of, I think everyone needs to kind of take joint responsibility and ownership. So if you haven't heard back, and then as Steve mentioned, everyone gets busy and our staff and providers are in many in review meetings, multiple ones a day, and it's a busy time of year and people get busy. And I know parents get busy with their duties and responsibilities and raising children that sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, that meeting is a week from now. So it's always good as a parent to even check in with your team, like, hey, you know, just checking in, our meeting is a week from now. I know my child had a recent reevaluation. Would someone get back to me about those results? So it's always good to have that two-way communication back and forth to, if you're not getting what you need. And certainly we do our best to get it to you ahead of time, but sometimes things happen.
Yeah, I agree, Lisa. And I would add to that, that at least when you do receive your notification for your meeting, that at least within that time span that you are receiving it, then in between there, again, because people's with schedules and everything. And I think, Lisa, we kind of brought this up because someone at the beginning of the question did ask about with technology. And from my understanding, most districts are offering families alternatives. So if a family does have issues with access to technology or is not really used to using emails or something, districts are offering that they can mail, the printed forms and documents before the meeting also. So again, it varies on how families are being informed of that, whether it's in the letter or the district automatically is kind of setting that as a rule or something like that. And Lisa, you could probably add what you're doing in your district also, but there is that option also.
Certainly here we have certainly mailed upon parent request. If they have difficulty with technology, we've offered to print them and have parents stop by and pick them up at the front desk. If they, I know snail mail has been very slow at times this past year, and when we think we're giving enough lead time and it still hasn't arrived. So certainly we can arrange for pickups, arrange for drop-offs. If the student's in person, we've done backpack mail and had the team send home in your child's backpack, if certainly sealed confidential envelopes. So we can do a lot of different things. We just need to know what works best for the family in terms of communication and getting you that information.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Thank you, Lulu and Lisa. I would like to add to the comment that was made about a lot of families having difficulty getting things in, should the district have to supply these things without being asked and whatnot. I very much always work on empowering parents. Believe me, I'm not an advocate that lays down and just kind of takes whatever comes my way. I've been in meetings with Lisa. I think she might be able to attribute to that. But also, I don't look for a fight just for the sake of, I don't have anything out against anybody at any particular meeting. I go into every meeting open and kind of with a clean, fresh mind, and let's address what's happening at the meeting. So to this point, I just want to say, like, for families, I wouldn't focus on like whose responsibility is it. I would focus on, I need to have this information before the meeting. And even if it was not the district's fault, and I agree with Lisa, this past year, the postal mail has been very slow, much slower than it used to ever be, of course, for the same reasons everyone else, the pandemic. But it may not be anyone's fault you didn't get the IEP in time or the draft or the reports, but it doesn't mean you have to have the meeting then. Like, the district's not going to want to reschedule that. I get it. But I would also firmly support, like, hey, your meeting is April 30th at 11 a.m. and 8 a.m. you have not received, or yesterday, the 29th, you've not received the reports. And I would get in touch with the chairperson and say, look, I am not ready to meet. And I don't want this meeting to happen until I can get a look at this stuff. I think that's reasonable. It's unfortunate for the district and whatnot, in a sense of they have a lot of meetings to have, but I think that's reasonable. So I would encourage you to take hold of the reins of your home and try to get that info. And then if it doesn't happen, then say, well, you have to postpone.
We do. We have we will do that, and we want to make sure it's a mutually convenient time and everyone has equal chance to participate. So if we have to reschedule, we'll do our best to do that. In addition to, the draft IEP, as we've talked about, evaluations, progress reports, or report cards, are there any other materials or resources you think parents, staff, and others should review in advance of their virtual meetings? Lulu, you wanted to share a little bit about your handout that you...
Sure. So just like anyone, the professionals, sharing reports and updates on the student, I always encourage, in the years when I was working more with families and, in districts, is also the same. They're an equal partner in the committee. So finding, those opportunities, and, the annual review meeting is a perfect time to do so. But again, everyone is in a different comfort level, and, whether speaking with other professionals and things like that. So something that, I always encourage, and many districts sometimes put it as resources in their website or set those, is to find resources that are available. I mean, we have federal tech centers, we have, the partnership also, OSC has currently now what we call is now known as the Early Childhood Family and Community Engagement and the School Age Family and Community Engagement, which were previously known as the Early Childhood Direction Center and the Parent Centers. So after today's session, we will be sharing the answers to the questions, and I do have links of where you can find offices like that can give you resources, questions you could have, reminders of like before the meeting that you could have about your child. And that's something that I always encourage. And what I found with families is that using this in the virtual platform, they might not feel comfortable to speak in front of the professionals, but having a tool like that before the meeting and kind of jotting down a couple of points, then that's easier for them to provide at a meeting. So that's, my big pet peeve with that also.
That sounds really great. I agree. I also think any kind of anecdotal data collection or hard data collection, a lot of classrooms, a lot of schools are doing that, or it really depends on the student perhaps. So I think whatever it is, and it should be quantified, I think, whether it's anecdotal or observations or whatnot, but I think that is all valid. So if there's a way to share that, however, online, through an email or a phone call or both, I think that also is good information to have.
Thank you. So we're setting up our meeting now, our virtual meeting that we've become so accustomed to. So team, what suggestions do you have about setting up the room where participants log into the video chat, and how to foster a good communication participation? What have you found that works for you? I know for me, it starts with, I try to log on a little bit early to be the first one on, because sometimes you have to let people in. Now it's like we let people into the virtual room, and just to greet everyone and have some small talk, how are things going, and welcome all the participants as everyone kind of logs on and gets settled. And sometimes I'll preset the parent. And for example, I will introduce, everyone in the meeting, so everyone's not jumping in and out. Sometimes it gets kind of funky and you don't want to over talk and talk over each other. Just to kind of preset the format of the meeting and make sure they know where the mute button and video button are and those kind of things to get started.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the chairperson or the facilitator of the meeting is hugely a big part of whether or not the meeting will be successful, because it's about communication. On a quick side note, one of the most satisfying things I get to do at meetings as an advocate is just turn to the parent and ask a question, one or two during the meeting. Like, do you have any questions about that? Is there something you wanted to share? Did you understand that? And a lot of times they're like, no, that's fine. But it's an important message for the parent to know that they're being valued. And it's really part of a role of an advocate to do that. It also sends a message to everyone at the meeting, on the committee, that it's a reminder that the parent's voice is important. And so to that point, I think the facilitator on a Zoom meeting, is watching, can watch for like whose microphone is on, whose is off, because that can indicate, or more importantly, if someone goes to turn it on and then turns it back off again, like, well, maybe they got cut off by somebody, so you might want to go back to that person, whoever it is on the team. So I think things like that, I agree with you about getting there early as a facilitator. That's also very important. So.
I agree. And one thing that I would add, Lisa, you mentioned, kind of walking through like the best practices in Zoom and in meetings. And I also think we want to be conscious because Zoom has become a norm for the professionals, but maybe for families, it's really not. And it could be either providing a set of steps of how to, when you send, this, how do you log in, if there's a password and things. You could also kind of include a slide or something with a visual and kind of setting that tone, but also kind of giving them that comfort level, because it's hard enough as it is. And now we're expecting them to participate in Zoom and they probably don't even know how to click on the reaction or the chat button or how to use it or something. So we want to be a little bit conscious of that, but not in a condescending way. So it's kind of like a reminder, let's let everyone speak. Sometimes people are not in agreement and you want to interrupt or something. So kind of like those rules, the same rules we have when we do meet in person, but maybe just add a little bit of explaining how we're going to do it in Zoom. So you can click on the raise my hand or put your question in the chat or wait until the person is completely done and then unmute. And that would be for everybody that's participating, not just the parent. But that's something that I keep in mind because we forget that they're not using Zoom all day the way we are.
And then there was a question in the chat on a related topic. They said, is it reasonable to request that all CSE members appear on the screen or at least log into a virtual interface instead of by phone? This could help avoid some attendance issues and improves the ability to have a conversation.
That's a tough question, I think.
Yeah, and I know for some, oh, sorry, Steve.
No, Lisa, go ahead.
We've had, like, for example, in Albany County, their facility doesn't allow them kind of access because we use Google Meet as a platform for our meetings. So they're only able to join us by phone. So there are some participants who their only access is by phone. And I always make a point when you just see the phone icon or a phone number is to make sure the person on the phone, because you can't see their face, identifies when they're speaking and who they are each time. And I also tell anyone, whoever's on this, this is who's behind the phone icon. And so it's important that if you can't see their face, that the person who is speaking and on the phone, you identify by saying, this is Lisa, and I have this question. So it helps with that. And sometimes I find that it's not easy to mute on the phone. So if you are participating from a phone line, that you're in a quiet location, because the background noise or wind or things, papers rustling can really be interrupt some of the meeting. And as the facilitator, I can mute people, and actually there was a lot of background noise with one person who wasn't speaking. So, but then I can't unmute them. So I have to say, I'm sorry, I had to mute you. This is how you turn yourself back on because there was too much background noise and no one could hear what was being said. So those are some of the nuances, I think, of the frustrations with the Zoom and the video conferencing. But I we don't make it a mandate because sometimes phone is the only way parents can participate. So we want to make sure everyone is able to participate. But we do want people to have their cameras on in a meeting if they're comfortable, and especially when they're speaking. So, sometimes people aren't speaking, they may turn their camera off and mute their microphone, but then it's important to be visible, I believe, when you're speaking.
I agree. And to the questioner's point about increasing engagement if they're on camera, I agree. If they're on camera, it'll increase engagement for everybody at the meeting. But I think your points, I was thinking a similar thing, Lisa, what you were saying, like, you don't know why people are on the phone. I mean, sometimes there might be traveling, maybe a professional teacher traveling between buildings or on their way home, maybe after a day, who knows what time the meeting's at. So there's reasons for it. And I think if you have concerns about if that's happened to you and you don't like it, probably from moving forward, I would suggest to that person to ask and say, look, is there a way we can make sure everybody can be on camera? It helps me at a meeting if I can see everybody. I think that would be a good way to be kind of proactive about it.
Another question that came up about the virtual meeting was, do you have any advice for families who need an interpreter at a virtual meeting? Some districts only allow so much time and interpreting takes longer.
Well, certainly on the district end, we try to account for building in extra time for interpreters to attend. And I think if need be, we can work with families if they need to be in the same room with the interpreter and practicing safety protocols and working out that in a space on campus, or if they both are comfortable being on at the same time, that we've ensured we've connected the interpreter to the family before the meeting. I don't know, maybe Lulu has some expert advice with that, given that you have probably more experience.
Yeah, it is challenging, but I do know that even before in person, districts do put into account when a family has requests for, they're entitled to have, a parent member or an interpreter there. So there has been of that. With districts that I have worked that have higher populations of non-English speakers, again, a lot of them are doing the community model, and they do have, bilingual parent liaisons or clinicians that are working with the families beforehand. And a lot of them, actually, the virtual headset has helped because they're working with the family and explaining how it's going to be done virtually. It gives the parent that opportunity to speak with that person in a native language to they pretty much have that pre-meeting beforehand and share everything there. And the person will disclose. I've talked to a couple clinicians and say, I'm taking notes of everything you're sharing now. Is that okay if I present that at the meeting for you tomorrow? So it really kind of like you bring in a report that has been said verbally in another language, and a person presents it to the rest of the committee in English. But yeah, it's something, they're entitled to, they're part of the committee. The procedure safeguards also says, things should be accessible. I also think about people with disabilities that are also hard in the hearing and the blind. So it's not just another language. It could be also parents that also have certain disabilities, and IDA and our procedure safeguards do say that we need to make things accessible to them. So that's always what I always kind of keep in the back of my mind, even if it's a little bit more work or more time or more people involved.
Right. I just want to add, I know we have a broad array of people on at this panel today, which is very exciting. And I think we could all agree, I'm going to use my language here, a word I'm thinking about. But I just want to say, I think we can all agree that if it's not in a language that everybody can understand, or there's no translation, then the meeting, it's a ludicrous meeting. Like, what is the point of having it? Especially if it's the parents or the guardians that need the translation. So to that end, I'm just saying that, like the questioner, a person put the comment in, said, it takes more time, and Lulu referenced that as well. I think we said, and it does, but it's not. I don't think it's a surprise. Like, it shouldn't be a surprise that we walk into a meeting and someone doesn't speak. We don't all speak the same language, so we can plan for it. And I think and we can plan for the meeting to be longer. If your standard CSE meeting annual review is 45 minutes, then you might want to plan this one for an hour and 15 minutes. Now, that might be more difficult, as Lulu referenced, in districts where there's a lot more non-English speaking or different language speaking people. But I think we still have to plan for it, because if we can't understand, what is the point? So that's all I'll say about that.
That is a good point, Steve. What is the point? And I think one of the benefits of our video calls is that closed captioning is built in. So I know that certainly has helped, because we actually have programs from our local Capital Region BOCES that are students and families that are deaf and hard of hearing. So that's certainly a feature that we've utilized, and it can be turned on for yourself. So that's really been nice to help facilitate additional communication. So should we kind of move on in our next steps to beginning the meeting? Lulu, do you want to start with the next question?
Okay, so we're going to move now more in talking and hosting the actual meeting. And the next question that we had is like, what are your thoughts on developing and utilizing a meeting agenda? For example, do you share the agenda with the entire IEP team, provide an agenda in advance, follow an agenda deliberately?
I think from the district perspective, I like to use the IEP almost as our agenda, and I preset everyone at the start of the meeting with, making sure we've introduced everyone and kind of setting the ground rules and whatnot as we've talked about. But using the IEP agenda, so kind of get a global review of the progress students made, and kind of going point by point through the academic section, and have the hope is the parents receive the draft and has a chance to read it. Do you have any questions, comments, changes, or additions to this, and then agree upon the needs, and then move on to the social section and then the physical section, and kind of go through each one. Any questions? It's really made our meetings very efficient especially when we've shared all the materials ahead of time, in terms of, all right, you've had a chance to read it, so we don't need to go point by point, but it's like, do you have any comments, questions, suggestions about it? Do you agree? Does it sound like your kid? What else, what are you seeing at home? And then going through the goals, and then which leads into the services and then accommodations, and kind of walking through the whole IEP as using that as our agenda.
So I've been to, I don't know, thousands, right, of annual reviews and CSE meetings. And I understand what you said, Lisa, but even as you were saying it, I'm sitting here thinking, what I really know as a parent is my kid. So I'm not against using the IEP as a agenda, but it only, to me, it's only going to work if the parent is in tune with the IEP itself relating to their child and has done the prep like you referenced. If that's happening, then it's a fine thing. A lot of times parents, a lot of times parents are, they may or may not be familiar with it, or they've read it, but they might be focused on other things that maybe aren't in there, maybe goals that they think should be in there. So I would say I don't like to rely just on the IEP. However, I would say to you that if the parents are doing prep, if I'm helping them and they're doing prep ahead of time and communicating with the school district, kind of doing some of that work ahead of time. I think you referenced that, Lisa. I think that then the IEP can become the agenda, or the parents can, or it can say, well, I want to talk about this with the whole team. And then we can add things besides that. Does that make sense?
Oh, certainly. I think it's always important to ask, is there anything else we haven't talked about, or anything else you wanted to discuss with us today? I don't think anyone likes surprises. Parents don't like surprises. Districts don't like surprises at meetings. So certainly, as you mentioned early on, Steve, you could never over communicate, and that it's important to reach out ahead of time. And certainly, especially hopefully during the pre-meeting, that, I think parents are more comfortable, or have been more comfortable, sharing it in a more intimate conversation or setting. And it can be intimidating when you're in a room of 6 or more, education staff that work with your child, whether virtually or in person. It can get a little nervous. So I think that pre-conversation is certainly helpful ahead of time to bring up any issues that may not be on the, eyes of the district at this time, that the parent is dealing with too. So
Excellent points, guys. Yeah, and I agree. And to go back on what you were saying, Steve, that families are in different places of understanding this whole process. We know that special education is not an easy process. It's very confusing, and all these evaluations and constant meetings and reports and stuff. So we can't assume that everyone really understands everything. I mean, even professionals that are not really in special ed, the non-special ed people, don't really understand it either. So we want to be conscious of that. And, like before, when we were mentioning also, in addition to many other things can be happening, families can be in very different situations. So if that person is not engaged or really not communicating, we also being careful with our assumptions, especially right now with the pandemic, because there's so many things that are happening emotionally, socially with families that are losing homes and jobs and stuff like that. So I also feel like we need to be sensitive of that. And, that's something that I always bring up. And then there's also other things like, the language and things like that. But again, it's a lot with the district, and the person facilitating the meeting also has the opportunity. And when you really do find somebody that's very concerned, or you're finding that's not going the right way, that person also is also key in saying, you know what, maybe we have to table this meeting and kind of set aside a time for someone to meet with you one-to-one, because it's a little bit overwhelming or something like that. So there's always options. So yeah. So I want to go on to the next question then, because do you have any suggestions for ensuring that all participants are on the same page during the meeting? So that everyone has access to all the reports, the documents, or anything. Any suggestions for that, or practices that you have currently?
This is one of my favorites. It's a favorite of mine because I think the phrase being on the same page is used in many different ways by many different people. I think it often implies like we need to agree. So like, well, let's get that report, or let's get someone else in here so that we can get on the same page. And so I think it implies, well, we want to be in this, agree on the same points. But I think there's a difference between that and kind of having the same information and making sure we all understand the same information. Sometimes districts do a good job of explaining where a student is at, let's say on their reading level or their reading ability. And sometimes parents don't hear it. I've seen that happen, but they don't hear the information, in part because they're already upset about something else or whatever. So to me, like being on the same, we're not on the same page. We're trying, but we're not on the same page because the parent hasn't, in this example, hasn't embraced what the district has shared in terms of their testing, So, but in terms of the idea of having information to share so that we can all look at it together, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that we should. And, I know we've talked about sharing screens and we can look at the IEP. I think that's a great thing. I know for me personally, like I'm the classic father, husband, male guy, who I cannot multitask very well. I'm a good reader, but if I'm reading, I have to read. I can't read something on screen and listen at the same time. I am missing something somewhere. So for me, I don't like to follow the IEP, even in front of me at in-person meetings. I want to be familiar with it ahead of time, have my questions ready, and be able to reference it quickly, but I can't be reading it then because I'll miss the whole meeting. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you, Steve. Lisa, did you want to add anything?
No, and I think what's worked especially for me and I is kind of giving everyone an opportunity to speak, and kind of as the facilitator looking around the screen and making sure everyone's had a chance to share, whether it's the special ed teacher or the related service provider. Give us a brief update. How's the year been going? Where are the strengths? What are you continuing to work on to kind of bring the IEP to life a little bit? And I know it sounds kind of prescribed going point by point, but it's not quite as prescribed when in practice. I like you kind of use the IEP as the framework for this is what we're talking about now, and then we'll go on to this and go on to this. So, and then after each section, checking with the parent, do you have any questions, anything else to add, what are your concerns or input, certainly. And when we get to the, as Steve mentioned, the goals, making sure parents understand what the goals mean and how we're monitoring that. I think that could be some of, lately I've found a challenge like between families and staff about understanding it's a yearly goal, and there's, this is what we want to be at the end of the year, and there's a lot of steps to get there. And so how we're going to measure the progress and document that we're reaching that annual goal at the end of the year. So that can be kind of tricky and hard to understand at times, because we as school professionals forget, we speak in our education lingo at times, and we need to be checked and, and make it come to life and understand for everyone's concerns. So
yeah, great points. Thank you, guys. Yeah. So when it was mentioned before about emailing the documents, again, Steve, I love how you were very open about sharing, not multitasking and everything. And, just as like our students are, us as adults are different types of learners, and a lot of us are visuals or tactile and need the paper. So I myself would admit, even I've gone back to graduate school twice, and I see the younger generation all on their laptops in the classroom just typing in, and I'm still like the old school notebook person taking notes, and then I go into the computer. So, you know, and I love Post-its and things like that. So for some people, that's what they need, even though we are sharing it virtually. So that's perfectly fine. Thank you so much. I do have, in terms of, do you have any suggestions to promote effective turn taking during the virtual meetings and ensuring that all attendees are able to participate?
Well, as
Lisa,
I
you've been holding a lot of
mentioned,
meetings virtually.
I
You've been holding a lot of meetings virtually.
have,
Yeah.
and it does, and I always joke with everyone, all right, I'm going to start with my Hollywood squares and go around the virtual room. But I think what lately has been helpful is the raise hand feature. So sometimes you definitely don't want to interrupt when someone's speaking, but if you can raise your hand, so accuse a facilitator that someone wants to respond, or put a quick question in the chat. Can we go back to this or talk about this? Or, you know, what does this mean when you say, what is this acronym? You know, little things that sometimes we use acronyms or whatnot. So I think that's been super helpful. And then again, making sure always you're checking in with the parent and the student. As you know, students get older, we want to make sure they're participating because we're talking about them. They're the star of the show. So we want their voice to be heard and come through as well. So it's important as a facilitator, you're always checking in and making sure people are participating. And
Yeah, I agree. I think in terms of the virtual, the chat box and the raising the hand is good. I think that preparation for the parent and student when they're attending is huge. So, you know, one dynamic that's improved as I've over the many years I've been doing this, but it's still out there, and it really depends on each situation, each family. But one that is out there often is a family is ready to go into a CSE meeting and make their point or win, or they don't necessarily feel that their voice is going to be heard. So they're already on edge because of their past experience in meetings, and they're ready to do a lot of talking. And frankly, what I often work with parents on is let's get familiar with what is in the reports and in the IEP. Let's get your questions ready or your concerns ready. Let's share them ahead of time before the meeting. And then let's go in and listen. Like, in part, I want to hear from people that are working with the student. And in part, I want to change the dynamic of the parent feeling like they have to defend what they want for their child. You know, it's really a way to kind of go to what the meeting is really designed for by law, which is a group of people working with this student to help them grow in spite of their disability or because of it or whatever. So, I just wanted to, I agree with you, Lisa. And I think in terms of turn taking, one thing I'm trying to work with parents on a lot is you don't have to be the first to speak. You don't have to be, we can wait to the end, you know, and to be prepared when the chairperson asks, look, if it's not an annual review, if the parent called the meeting, well, the proper etiquette is for the chairperson to say, well, you called the meeting, what would you like to talk about? And I appreciate that, and that's good. But I also don't want the parent talking for 15 minutes after that. I want them to kind of be prepared and say, I'm concerned about reading, I'm concerned about suspensions, and I wanted to talk with everyone about what's happening and what can we do to help that. And then let's let the team talk. It changes the dynamic. It helps the parent to learn to be a little bit more at ease. And then if it's something that they can't agree upon at the end of the meeting, we can still table the meeting. So that's a little angled on the turn taking, but I thought it was related, so I wanted to share that.
No, that's great, Steve. I agree with you, the turn taking. I also, and I know it was mentioned before, always say, if you need clarification, ask the question. Can you repeat that or explain it? Because sometimes, again, we forget the terms that we're using, or depending also the professional as a clinician, whether it's like an occupational therapist or a psychologist, like are kind of describing things. And I'm like, can we model that in an everyday, like, you know, the same way you see the reports that you're saying like short memory term, like, what did you do so that you could come to that conclusion, and like in simple things. So sometimes even just, I tell parents, it's perfectly okay. Not everyone is an expert. Everyone is an expert, and not even an expert in their area of work, but doesn't mean that they're like an expert either. So it's okay, you know.
The first time you hit tripod grasp, you're like, what's that? Is that something you put a camera on? I don't understand. But that's only the first time. Anyway, sorry,
yeah. No, and then the one last point, what I was saying, turn taking and engaging like that kind of adds on to this is, you know, thinking of the different types of cultural norms, not necessarily just a language, but you do have, because I do work throughout the state where it could be from families that are, because of the language or the cultural norms for, you know, Middle Eastern, Native Americans, of talking to professionals or questioning professionals. Because when I did work throughout the state more through directly in districts, many of them felt like, well, they are the professional and they went to school for that and they're licensed for that. And I feel like I'm being disrespectful if I'm asking them questions. So it's more of a cultural thing, not that they're engaging or anything. So really also when I worked around regions and work with families like that, I'm like, no, you're part of the team and it's okay. And even Americans don't understand half of the stuff that's happening also. So that's okay. You're not being disrespectful. So I feel like that's a block that a lot of families of different cultures also have, of speaking with the professionals and questioning, you know. So that's something that I quickly wanted to chime in on. Moving on to the next question. What have you noticed about a parent participation during the virtual CSE meeting? Do you have suggestions to encourage more meaningful participation? It's kind of a little bit of a repeat from before, but anything else you want to add? Anybody?
I would
think, okay. I'd say the problem is we talk over each other, right, Steve?
There you go.
That's what happens in meetings too. No, I think overall we've had great parent attendance and participation, and more so than when we were in person. I think certainly this avenue is a little, you know, lends them to join us wherever they are, not having to take them as much time off from work or travel, and so it reduces some of the barriers to participation. So certainly that's I see as a positive.
I would quickly, I'm watching the clock. I'm like, I would quickly add that I think we have covered this, and but if, and I do think it's improved. However, the parent participation. However, if anyone's out there and that's not been your experience or people that you serve, please get a message to us in the chat box. I'm sure any or all of us would be happy to converse with you through email or on the phone and kind of talk about it and give you some strategies for whatever you're going through. Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and move to the next one, because the same way we've been discussing quite a bit about parents, I want to now add that with students. So like you said, because of the time, I want to make sure we quickly touch on the different questions.
My thought, the thing I wanted to share about students, I mean, I think it's pretty much the same principles, the same prep, you know, you do a lot of preparation. But I think with the student, you know, we should come from the student's perspective. So I'm thinking about a couple of people that I've known who have cerebral palsy, and their speech is much harder to understand. It takes a lot more work for them to talk, and it's a lot more work for me to listen when they're talking. But I learned as I got to know them that I can understand them. It just takes more time and effort. I think what I would, for that student in a meeting, I would want to ask them how do they want to communicate in the meeting? You know, if they want to speak with their voice, then that's what we need to do. And if we think we're going to need more time, then that goes back to kind of like the language thing. Well, then let's add in a little more time. I don't want to be rushed. I don't want the student to feel rushed. And if, you know, some students might not want that. They might be like, I don't want to talk at the meeting. I don't mind talking at home or in class, but I'm not talking at the meeting. And so I think we should follow the student's lead and give them whatever they need. How's that for a short answer?
I agree, Steve. And our special ed teachers, the case managers or advocates for the student, are really kind of the point person to start this conversation. And we have some students who do not want to participate in the meeting, and we let them not participate and opt out, or if the parents have concerns about their participation. We've done different things in terms of we meet and then bring the student in near the end to have a conversation. So we can certainly be flexible in this land of like hybrid learning when we have our students in person some days and not in others. If the student wants to participate, we set them up in a private room with their device or in the same room with a teacher so they can have the moral support of their teacher, and they wear their masks and are, distant with their teacher regularly anyway. So to make sure either the parent or the teacher, depending if they're home or in school, they have access to a device in a private location to have the meeting. Certainly, I like to tell students that we're talking about you. You're the star of the show. So we really want to hear your voice and your input, and ask them too. Do you use this accommodation? Does it work for you? Does it not work for you? Because you're the one that has, we can put it on paper, but if it doesn't work for you and it's meaningless, then why do we have it on the IEP? So I think it's really important that students start taking an active interest in our district. It's usually around 8th grade. They start joining the meetings or at least having conversations. And then a couple of my teachers do a phenomenal job of actually going through the IEP with the student, having them highlight what parts actually, this sounds like me, this is true about me, or highlight this in a different color, this doesn't sound like me, and get to know what the IEP is. And because we're teaching them to advocate for themselves beyond high school. Because when that student leaves us, a parent or a teacher cannot go to college or cannot advocate for them at a job placement or at college classes. They're the ones that have to self-report if they want services, meet with Disability Services Office, and really take ownership. So it's important for them to know what their different abilities are, what their strengths are, what they need support with, so they can advocate when they leave us and go on to their post-high school plan. So it's really important we teach those self-advocacy skills throughout the process.
Great tips, folks. And now with technology, and even from before, strength-based, and like Steve mentioned before, sometimes communication verbally could be a challenge. But over the years, I've seen, especially when it starts coming, Lisa, like what you were saying, transition, there's programs like Project Search and stuff where kids do use applications like a PowerPoint, a slideshow, a video or something. So it might not necessarily that they'll participate speaking right there, but they might develop, a lot of times, many teachers, I do see teachers that do beautiful jobs with children, and they can present. Back in the days, it was all reports. Now everything is all like PowerPoints and slideshows and stuff, and they're really good at that. And that might be the way. So that might be the way the students' participation through the process. So just offering those different types of alternatives, and that would work for them. That's their best way of medium of communicating also. So we do have, the next question is talking about discuss how you use technology during the meeting. And I think we kind of touched on that before, in sharing documents or sharing the screens. So I think we can now move forward, Stephen. It's going to be question 15, which comes now to what we're doing in this meeting. And I'll pass the baton to you.
Thank you, Lulu. Okay, so the question is, do you recommend recording the Zoom meeting? Who wants to start us off?
Sorry, pushed the wrong button to unmute. Still struggling with that. Typically, we don't. I think there's, as mentioned, we want to make sure there's consent from everyone that the meeting is being recorded. Typically, as a district, we do not record the meeting unless a parent, one, either asks us to or tells us that they're going to record the meeting. So then we'll record our own meeting as well. I think it really, people get nervous when it's meetings recorded, and may not feel so open to speak so freely or comfortably or openly and have an open and transparent discussion, for fear that whatever I say may be used against me later on. But so it can create some feelings of unease, I think, across committee members, knowing that the recording it seems much more formal, and I like CSE meetings to be a conversation, a discussion about the strengths and the needs and the highlights and the little points and how we can move forward. So that's just, we would only record if a parent was recording.
Lulu, you got anything to add?
I second that with the recording, but I did want to bring up, this is one of those cases when something pops up on the Zoom. Alyssa did share a comment that our participant said, and it's that the school age FACE centers offer student-directed IEP trainings. So like I mentioned before, when we do share the document with the answers to the questions, you will have where you could find at a statewide level where there are the FACE centers throughout the state that you can find, because yes, they do have a lot of trainings and ways of supporting families and students for the whole special education process, whether it's preparing for an annual review, transition, or a student-directed IEP training. So thank you for somebody mentioning the comment there. And I guess the next question, Steve.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to skip the next one. It's about the chat box. We've covered the chat box, don't you think? I think we have. Yeah, okay. So the next question, can you discuss some strategies for coming to mutual understanding or consensus during CSE meetings? This can apply to virtual or in person. Who wants to start?
Well, okay, I'll jump in. So I think it's, consensus is we certainly want to all feel that we've had discussion and input into the decision, and it's consensus to me is more about we can agree with what we all come to terms with. So for example, and I think sometimes, I tell, parents a lot and families that the IEP is kind of molded in Play-Doh. We shift it this way now and we see how things go and see what's working. And then we can always re-meet at any time to reshape it into something else or shift it again. And we think about too, and I think people can come in with, different recommendations or suggestions or programs or ideas, and that I've been using this analogy a lot lately also in terms of when we want to go to a new location, we plug in the address in our GPS on our phone, right? And my phone can take me like 3 different ways or 5 different ways to and from the place, and it might be a different way there and a different way back. So I think we all have to recognize what we agree upon the goals. Like, we want your child to be successful and have access to their learning environment and the tools that they need to be successful. How we get there and how what we recommend as a district may not be exactly the same route the parent may take on their GPS. So where can we kind of meet in the middle and agree upon to try these things and then see how it goes and move forward.
Yeah, great. Lulu, anything?
I second pretty much everything. And then again, I think it's very crucial of the facilitator and the team always reminding the family that there's always opportunity to revisit things because so much happens and changes too. I mean, think about if we're having these meetings in March and April, and then the child, school starts in September, so much can happen in between. So we always, want to just openly, like, we don't only talk about this once a year. At any time you can reach out to your team, and if something really has happened in between or changing that you notice because you're the one that's with your child most of the time, that's perfectly fine. So that's the one takeaway that I get with families for that.
Excellent. Yeah, and I with both of what you said, I want to especially focus on what Lisa said about meeting somewhere in the middle. And consensus doesn't mean we agree on every point or how to approach this. I think for me as a parent, preparation for that, like planning as an Italian parent, an emotional Italian guy, I'm going into a meeting, then for my child, I want to prepare for the possibility that I'm not going to get exactly what I'm thinking, but what can I live with? And also the idea that I don't have to wait a year to figure out if it worked. We can talk in 2 months, we can, and whatnot. So yes, consensus. I think going in, if there's one word comes out of today's training from me, it's preparation, emotionally and intellectually. Great. Okay. I'm going to combine 2 questions. So I want to ask, what pitfalls do you notice in virtual CSE meetings? And how would you remedy those? And also, do you notice advantages to CSE meetings, virtual CSE meetings? All right, so advantages and pitfalls, and how would you address the pitfalls? And we're looking at like 13, 14 minutes. Go ahead. Who's up?
Well, pitfalls, I would say, because right before we even opened the panel, I have a very windy day, and I do have two ways of having internet in my home. And sometimes there's like a span that you get like a 10-second that I freeze because I lose one or the other. So sometimes, just being aware of that and also letting others know, having an alternative. If there's phone numbers they can call then, and if they're completely losing, their technology, that's also something that I also would encourage. Yeah.
Great, Lisa.
Definitely, certainly, like in my district, we recently experienced a network outage for almost a week. So we weren't able to, we had to, again, navigate around this uncertainty, and we actually had to have our school people meet in person with their safety protocols in place and contact the parent by phone to keep the meetings going. So we knew we couldn't lose a week time. So we had to work around those technology glitches. Those are some of the pitfalls, or like Lulu mentioned, spotty Wi-Fi or having a phone as a backup number. And I've called parents on my phone and had them speaker through my technology. We've tried to work around all of those different things. I think one of the hard things about virtual CSE meetings in my experience this last year is that I really miss that person-to-person contact, especially if there's, you mentioned Steve, conflict or high emotion state. And I think that's harder to navigate in a virtual meeting. You really miss that kind of eye contact and you being able to, just kind of breathe together and just take a moment, and sometimes even take a break if you need to. And I think it's important too, if even virtually, if you need a break, just say, can we take a 5-minute break? Everyone turn off their cameras and their mics and come back. We can still do that. But I think it's just harder to reduce tension, and that human connection isn't there. That's so important, the nonverbal piece when there's conflict, to help de-escalate a situation and calm stressed minds.
That's great. I think we should not underestimate how stress and our feelings affect communication in all facets, and certainly at CSE meetings. So I think those are great points. I would like to take this opportunity.
Yeah, I wanted to add, because I know you also said the advantages, and I know we talked about it before, but again, it is for everyone, whether it's the professionals not having to leave a classroom or something, or the families, whether it's work schedules or they have younger children at home or something, or the commute. It's, school could be 40 minutes away or something like that. So to a certain point, that is the advantage of the meetings virtually is like part of the participation has a lot to that to do. And I think that's something that I'm hoping that in the future, we continue to do this hybrid maybe. That I'm hoping that districts do continue, especially with the winter months in certain places or something, that we can have, maybe we set 2 days of the week, and maybe when the school year starts, what's your preferred way? Do you want to, if we are in person again, or would you want to continue to do hybrid? I mean, that's a good way also now as we're having meetings to kind of annotate those things, to kind of have those alternatives, especially for districts where the virtual meetings have been working so nicely. So I think I kind of jumped into that question there, Steve.
Oh, that's great. But you're right. We did ask that. So that's important. Lisa, do you have any thoughts on advantages? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've definitely had increased participation, and I do think that this type of method will continue once we're back in person. So I agree with Lulu. I think it's great. Ask ahead of time, do you want to do a video conference or do you want to meet in person? So I think giving people choice will be important for the future.
Yeah, and I think too, like the technology of having, like, I forget if I talked about this before we started the training or if it was in the training, but like hybrid meetings. Like, so if, I set up a meeting with a family that I serve and my supervisor and another provider, I'm not a technical guy, but I was able to set up a Google Meet like that, no problem. So now there might be some other things districts have to watch out for in terms of security and whatnot. But for the most part, it's not, what I'm saying is it's not hard to do. So I think that the idea of having the hybrid and being able to do either one and have either member come into the meeting, I think that's great. I hope we do that. I'd like to point out that in the chat box, Alyssa has reminded us to please, and I am begging everybody who's here, please fill out the conference evaluations. Okay, so it should be in your email. You can fill out for each of the workshops. The task force really looks to that for what we do in the following year. So we want your input. It does not have to all be positive. Just tell us what you're looking for and what you liked, what you didn't. Please. And you know what I would encourage you to do is do it when you're done with this training. Don't leave it for tomorrow because you're going to forget. All right. What the last question? Well, I think we covered the last question. We still have 3 minutes. If anyone out there has questions for the chat box, bring them in, or if someone's on the phone. But Lulu or Lisa, do you have any thoughts that you want to close out with while we're waiting for any last minute stuff?
So I do want to say that we do have the questions and the answers in a document that we will be sharing with, because since you registered, so that will be going to you shortly. But I wanted to go ahead, since some are here, and share the link for the New York State partnership. It's right on in NYSED, and that has a list at a state level of all the regional centers and for early childhood and school age also. Oh, I think I shared it to Alyssa, but maybe she can share to everyone. Thank you, Alyssa. So it's more because also everyone was so used to the other names and they're like, what happened to ECDC or something like that? And, you know, it's stuff like people are like kind of lost with that. And again, that's like a tool. It's intended to support families throughout the state, and it's all available for free for families. And whether it's for you to participate in, you know, their events, their, you know, the presentations, or even to call somebody for some help you with questions and guide you through things, as someone that you can use also.
Great, thank
Absolutely.
you.
And I just want to thank everyone for their attention today on a Friday afternoon. Wish everyone a wonderful weekend and a successful meeting season ahead, the remainder of the school year, and cautiously optimistic. We're coming out on the other end of this interesting time in our world of education. But I appreciate presenting with Lulu and Steve and Alyssa. I don't know if there's any other questions from the group in the chat, but certainly Steve mentioned, I don't know if we want to put our contact information in our handout. If people want to reach out to us.
I think, Lulu, did you do that? Did you put our contact info in there or no?
The Word doc has our name and our office or location, but I can add emails. I don't know if we sent it to Alyssa already.
Okay, well, she may, oh, okay, yeah. Alyssa, let us know at some point if you want us to send you that. You probably have our emails, obviously, but maybe if you could send that along with when you send a document out to everybody. And I mean, I don't think there's
fill out the survey so you could get the document.
Yes, right.
That's the incentive.
We definitely
I participated at the 1 o'clock one, and they were talking about that and how when students are not to engage virtually, like what incentives can we offer them, you know?
That's right. That's right. I like it.
Yeah, so,
well,
but yes, thank you everybody for participating, and Lisa and Steve, thank you so much and your hard work. I know it's been a very different year, but doing this work takes a lot of commitment, you know? So thank you to everyone that participated here today too.
Yes, thank you, Lulu and Lisa. I enjoyed it. And thank you, Alyssa, for your support. And everyone have a great weekend. And please reach out to us if we did not cover what you were hoping to hear, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. Thanks so much. Take care.